What was the story of the weekend, guys? What was the story? There's so many different directions. Pizzi, we've all weighed in some way, shape, or form. We've yet to hear from you since this weekend, so I will start with you. You go to the pub this evening, and so it's like, hey, I hear it was a big weekend in combat sports. What was the story? What was the story this weekend?
In Ireland,
oh fuck! You know what? I didn't even think of that angle. So I guess it was. Yeah, it might not even be the one that everyone else says. Go ahead.
So in Ireland, the next day, I was meant to be on the show with the lads afterwards, but the streaming situation was dire here.
But that's your fault. I mean, the Wi-Fi there is shite.
Come
let's
on,
be
mate.
honest.
Listen, let's stop being such a shill.
Yeah.
I had a TV, I had a laptop, and I had my phone out, and they would all stop at different times. So I'm trying to watch, and then it would stop for like 5 minutes, and then the third round would start playing on all of them at the same time. But the problem was we were already in round 7, and I was losing my shit. Elaine went to bed, and I woke her up. I was shouting at my devices so much during this process.
My favorite part was people hitting me up like I work for Netflix tech support.
No, you took that upon yourself. You were saying to me, what's going on? And I was like, mate, I can't fucking watch the thing. And you're like, well, what do you want me to do?
Yeah, what do you want me to do? I'm locked in here. I got Jordan Maldonado screaming down my neck. You think I'm worried about the stream?
It's tough.
Yeah, it is tough. It is tough.
Well, you're asking me, what do you think's happening here? And I was like, well, the fucking buffering symbol is happening a lot. That's it. The next morning, people were very upset with Rosie Perez here. Very upset with Mauro Ronaldo, the legend. And honestly, I was being hit like you at that point. So I haven't had a proper viewing experience of this fight yet. And I woke up at like 10 a.m. with people in Ireland who've just watched the fight. They didn't stay up for it. And they're like, this is an absolute disgrace. I mean, this fight is so close. And they're acting as if Katie Taylor has somehow, abused the rule set and has used her head to cut her open in the hopes that the fight would be stopped early. And then when the decision is read out in her favor, Mauro and Rosie particularly were like, this is crazy. And when I watched the fight, that's not what I saw at all. I actually had scored it. I had it round by round, but I can't find the piece of paper. But I had a draw at the end with the point deduction.
So did I, by the way.
I was like, I don't mind if this goes either way. It's a brilliant, brilliant fight. But for all the talk, and I know you saw plenty of this of the Tyson, so many people so upset about desecrating the legacy of Tyson. In Ireland, we felt as though Katie Taylor, what she's done for women's boxing, it feels like they're tarnishing her legacy by saying she's using her head. She didn't win the fight. She has no argument for her winning the fight. That was pretty much how Irish people felt about it. And that would have been the story of the weekend over here. Certainly, you know what Katie means to the Irish people. So they felt
apparently not important enough to stay up. I mean, it was only what was
well, mate, when the stream is fucking all over the gap. What do you want us to do?
I mean, I remember them staying up for Connor. I'll just say that.
Will you have a word with Netflix about it?
I will. Believe it. The trilogy will be just fine. It obviously
why would we do a trilogy? Why would we do a trilogy?
It obviously won't take place in Croke Park because they love her, but not enough to actually have her fight in a proper stadium in Ireland. But I actually agreed with you. I thought it was going to be a draw because of the point deduction. And I was, look, I don't think that Rosie Perez should be held to the same standard as a typical fight analyst. Now, you could say, look, you're being put in that chair, you're being put in that spot, then you should be held to that standard. But she's more the celebrity fan. She's from Puerto Rico. To me, she just has an inherent bias just because of her background. She's not going to hide from it. It was a super close fight. I got a lot of shit. I got a lot of stick. People were saying that I should have defended Katie's honor in front of Jordan.
That's not your job. That's not your job. I did.
I mean, he went in there. I didn't give him the mic, but I did think that the cut was significant. The headbutts were significant to the point where there was a point deduction. And so it was a story. And Katie should defend herself. To me, defending her honor was giving her a chance to answer to what he was saying about her. And he said it about her in between rounds. I think it was in between the 8th and 9th or 9th and 10th where he said that she was fighting dirty. So I was giving her a chance to defend herself. It's not up for me to be there, white knighting for her. I mean, look at this cut. It's pretty damn significant. And so I thought I was doing that. In retrospect, people thought otherwise to a degree. I thought Katie and Amanda were both very classy afterwards. Even Amanda the next day apologizing for saying that she, in the moment, thought that she was leaning in with her head and trying to headbutt her, etc. She did mention the featherweight thing a bunch of times. At that point, it's like, you signed up for this, so I get it. I would love to see another fight. I would love to see a trilogy. I would love to see it 2 more times. The 20 rounds that they've shared in the ring have been magical. Each one better than the previous one. Just absolute amazing stuff. And what's so important, and I'm actually kind of happy that you've led with this, Pete. The thing that pissed me off the most wasn't the complaints about the stream, wasn't the complaints about Mike Tyson's age. We knew about all this. How many times did I say on this show, I don't know what to expect, and I don't know how to feel. How many times did I say on this show that the day Nikisa told me about this fight, I thought, really? Like, you guys are fighting Andre August and Ryan Borland. Like, this is a departure from that. And saying, I just hope everything is okay. And I thought once that, he withdrew in June, that the fight would have been scrapped altogether and they wouldn't have gone back to the well. And I wanted the Logan Paul fight and all that stuff. I said this time and again. I have not changed my stance. I am happy that everything, was okay and everyone seems healthy and we can move on from this. But there's 2 things that kind of get under my skin when I see the aftermath. Number one, it's the people who, again, never talk about boxing, don't watch boxing, don't care about boxing, don't have a DAZN subscription, aren't watching Top Rank on a Saturday or Friday night, aren't watching PBC on Amazon, and I see them saying, we need to stop being conned by this. We need to stop falling for this. We need to stop, giving this our attention so that boxing can clean itself up once and for all. You don't watch boxing to begin with. You don't give a shit about boxing. You weren't conned by anything. The only thing that you did was convince yourself that Mike Tyson was going to show up as a 1987 version of himself and turn back the clock and shut up the guy that for whatever reason you can't stand. You're the sucker. You convince yourself of this. No one conned you. No one told you that he was going to turn back the clock. And no one told you that this was the best of boxing. Because if you stuck around for Barrios Ramos, if you stuck around or showed up early for Taylor Serrano, you would have seen the best of boxing. And the issue with boxing over the years has been put one fight at the top and nothing on the bottom. This card didn't do that. Did you watch Shushu Carrington on the prelims? Did you watch Shadeja Green on the prelims? No, you didn't. Did you watch Taylor Serrano? You may have stumbled while you were waiting to talk shit about Tyson Paul. But if you watched, and a lot of people came up to me on Saturday when I was at my kids' soccer, like, holy shit, those 2 women were incredible. Tell me more about them. And so, yes, there is a trickle-down effect. And yes, it will go down as the most watched women's sporting event in U.S. history. That's incredible. But spare me we were conned again. You know why you weren't conned? You didn't pay a cent for it. It was part of your Netflix subscription. If you would have paid $70, you have, and Dana White said it himself, you have a leg to stand on. This was essentially free. No one told you to sign up. You all had it already. And so this idea that you were conned, this idea that, oh my God, the stream, this and that, yeah, of course that was annoying, but you didn't pay for it. It was all on the house. It was all extra added value. You got great fights beforehand, and you got what you should have expected in the main event. That's what you should have. What did I say? It was going to be Jake Paul, probably via decision or fourth round. I don't know what show I said it on. Maybe it was not this one, but that's what I was saying leading up to the fight. And that's what we got. Now, we could talk about whether or not he carried him, whether or not he went easy, but I'm happy that we didn't see Mike Tyson get knocked out. I'm happy we didn't see him get stretchered out. And I'm happy that, most importantly, Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano are being talked about by the world, that when Amanda Serrano is now posting on social media, she's getting 200,000 likes. And you're right, Pete. Katie Taylor didn't deserve that. She's one of the greatest athletes in the history of combat sports and certainly one of the most respected and classy athletes. She didn't deserve those boos, but I was hearing it in my ear, the commentators, and I was hearing the crowd boo her, and so I wanted her to respond to that because she, in my opinion, deserves the opportunity to respond to that. Regardless of all that nonsense, spare me the fucking sanctimonious bullshit about we were conned. You were not conned. You conned yourself. No one conned you. Everyone knew exactly what this was. 14-ounce gloves, 8 2-minute rounds. You should have known better, and you should have listened to the people who were telling you what to expect. Everyone else, you hopefully got a great night of fights and enjoyed it for what it was, and it sucks about the streaming, but these are the things that are going to happen. Hopefully by the time they have NFL on Christmas and Raw in January and all that stuff, Seriously. They figure it all out.
Yeah, one thing, Chuck Mendenhall wrote an article about this global outrage, and he makes a great point at the very end of the article. Let's let's remember what was the engine room of the promotion of this fight. It was controversy. From the word go, people were up in arms about Mike Tyson fighting Jake Paul. In a way, this event, it's asking for that. The whole situation has been this controversy, clutching pearls. Oh my God, this guy's a joke. This guy's a legend, but he's very old. All this stuff. It was only ever going to be lampooned. Do you get me? Like it was that is something that these events breed. Like every single Jake Paul fight, and we've saw it on a much smaller level in MMA audiences or somewhat of a boxing audience. But this is the first time, as you said, 65 million people around, or 65 million households around the world have this on their screen. It was inevitable. Like, I completely agree with you in terms of I would much rather this outcome than seeing Tyson sprawled out in the first round or any round for that matter. But when we're preparing to watch an event like this, and an event that has been fueled by outrage and controversy, of course it was going to be a massive lampooning when it happened, no matter what way it happened. So I think you've got to expect that to some degree. I don't think these people, for the most part, are really upset. I don't think they're like sitting, drinking their coffee on Monday morning and being like, I can't fucking believe they did this. Like they aren't. But the way the event was, it was always going to have this outpouring of emotion. And there is things to be annoyed about, but nothing terrible happened. As I said to you the next day, I texted you the next day and said, Tyson is fine. He's texting. I mean, he's putting out social media posts, speaking afterwards, all this stuff. This is great because our worst fears weren't realized. But of course, it's part of this that everyone would get on and criticize Jake Paul, a 28-year-old man, fighting Mike Tyson, a 58-year-old man. Of course.
He's also around $40 million or so richer. No one forced him to take this fight. He gladly wanted to take this fight. And in fact, he tells me afterwards he wants to do more. Do I want to see more of him in there? No, it was what it was. He looked much older than he did 4 years prior against Roy Jones. The guy who fought Roy Jones, I think, would have had a much better showing than the one who showed up on Friday. He had obviously been through something very significant just a few months ago, and maybe that should have been the sign to pull the plug. And I don't think anyone would have faulted them for it. But in the end, nothing serious happened. And in the end, it was, to me, the greatest byproduct of all of this was that boxing was put on Netflix and a lot of people got to see it and hopefully are now fans of Mario Barrios and Albo Ramos and Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano. Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano 2 never happens. We would never have gotten it if not for this fight happening on Netflix. It was DOA. They couldn't have been further apart. Katie Taylor was fighting at 140. Amanda Serrano was fighting at 126, and she was saying she's only fighting 3-minute rounds from here on out. They couldn't have been further apart. So you saw those 10 rounds on Friday. You loved those 10 rounds. You were never getting them if not for this. And so there are things that should be celebrated. Now, do we want to keep seeing Jake fight these fights? No. Do I want to see him fight someone in the top 10 next? No, as Stephen A. Smith said. Like, what? Again, you're just proving that you don't know what you're watching. He's not a top 10 fighter just yet. Is it possible that we're going to get the Canelo fight, as I said last week? Yes. But Rick has been the one from the beginning who has said he doesn't care for that path. And so let me turn it to you, Rick. You see this. You now have had 2 days to digest it. Your take on what transpired there. Was that just another Jake Paul fight? Was that a sham? Tell us your honest feelings. Was that a step backwards for him as a draw? Was that a step forward? Is he more popular now? How do you feel about it 2 days later?
A step forward. As you said, I have been pretty steady on my feelings about Jake Paul. No interest in Jake Paul's boxing career. Big interest in Jake Paul being one of the only people who can drive an event of this magnitude, not just for his star power, but also now he has the production, he has the promotion to be able to do it. And now potentially with a successful event, I would consider the success. I can't speak for Netflix. I imagine that they got a lot of eyeballs on their product, and I would imagine they view it as a success. Now a potential distribution arm that is massive that he now has partnered with once and could partner with in the future. You can't look at this as anything other than a success from the Jake Paul business perspective, from the Jake Paul brand, from the MVP business perspective, the MVP brand. I don't want to see him fight a top 10 boxer because I don't think it would be particularly competitive. That person would beat Jake Paul, and I'm very certain of that because I don't think he's as good a boxer as a top 10 in the world boxer in his weight class. But I am very interested and continue to be interested in Jake Paul putting on big, high level, very big profile entertainment. The problem is, it feels like this was like the apex. It feels like this was the top. How do you go anywhere from here? A name like Canelo, to me, would achieve that goal, but I don't think it would be a competitive boxing match. I think Canelo would be as far ahead as Jake Paul as Jake Paul was ahead of Mike Tyson.
Isn't that the best case scenario then? Everyone wants to see him lose at this point. And Canelo...
For the people that are rooting against him, you mean?
Yeah.
Sure. If they
By the way, everyone is rooting against him. The only way that people would have left Friday, streaming issues aside, with a smile on their face is he gets knocked out in the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth round, right?
I think that's
the only result.
Of the hardcore like combat community, yes. I think there are a lot of like his fans, and that is a big number, that are like, Jake Paul, this is what we want. We want to see him take on the next challenge. The same way KSI fans, like, this is a not insignificant number of people who see Jake Paul as an inspiration, see Jake Paul as a reason to chase your dreams and do these things. So the hardcore combat fans, I think, all want to see Jake Paul lose, certainly. But I don't think there's an insignificant number of people who want to see Jake Paul achieve those.
Everyone who's my age.
Well, up against Mike Tyson, yes, but against like Tommy Fury is a casual being like, I want to see Jake Paul. I don't think they give a shit about Tommy Fury one way or another, so they don't really care for Jake Paul to win or lose in that scenario. But putting on, there are a few names in this sport, and this weekend John Jones fought. I don't even think he's in this conversation, but it's Jake Paul, Conor McGregor, and maybe like one or two others that are even kind of scratching at that can put on a spectacle that, just because they are fighting, and it doesn't matter who, that people will tune in to watch. It's a short list. It is a very short list. And he has that ability. That's why I don't give a shit about, like, I want to be a championship level boxer. You're not going to be, and I don't care about that. I care about the spectacle of what Jake Paul can bring to the sport.
This past week, he didn't say much of that. I'm sure it's part of the plans. You know, what's interesting is you talk about, who wants to watch what. The best cruiserweight in the world, and that's what he is. He's a cruiserweight.
Yeah.
The best cruiserweight in the world is Jai Opetaia. I guarantee you, all these people saying, put him in there against the top 10. Let's just say top 1. The guy who has the best chance, right, to beat him. They don't know who he is, and B, they're not watching that fight.
That's right.
Jai Opetaia to them is Ryan Borland.
That's
is Andre. Right. To them. To us, we'd be like, oh, fuck, sign me up. Zurdo Ramirez beat Chris Billum-Smith on Saturday. That's maybe the second best cruiserweight in the world. They're not watching that fight either. They couldn't care less. But I'll tell you what they will watch. They will watch him versus Canelo, or him versus Conor McGregor, or him versus God knows who. Logan Paul. So he occupies that lane. But here's the difference between, say, Jake and KSI, if we want to go down that path. On Jake's cards, there are legitimate top boxers in the world fighting against each other with the stakes as high as can be. I have no issues with the Misfits guys. They occupy a great lane as well, but you're not getting Taylor Serrano on a Misfits card. They're open about that. You're not getting a WBC welterweight title fight on a Misfits card. You're not getting a Shushu Carrington on a Misfits card, or even on the previous iterations of the early days of Jake Paul. And there's something that needs to be said about that. It's like what I always said about CM Punk in the UFC. When CM Punk was in the UFC, he didn't take someone's spot. He created spots. He created a spotlight. And why or how people don't recognize that, the Jake, like I was saying to people who were upset about the Jake fight, turn it off after Taylor Serrano. Appreciate the fact that Taylor Serrano was viewed by 50 million households. We celebrated when 1 million viewers watched on DAZN their first fight. How could you not be happy about that? How could that not be something at least worth celebrating and honoring and at least acknowledging? But for some reason, people can't do it. And I know what people are probably going to say. You're shilling, you're in his pocket. I've never been paid by MVP. I've never been paid by Jake Paul. I will never get paid by Jake Paul. I will never get paid by MVP. Am I on the broadcast? Yes, but I'm getting paid by DAZN, by Showtime, by Netflix, etc. I've gone into open fights with Jake Paul. Could not care less. If they never want to have me on it again, God bless. I've told them I don't want to work certain things. I've turned down certain things, and on it goes. Y'all could believe what you want. But if you are not acknowledging that at least opportunities are being given to some of the best boxers, pure boxers in the world as a result of these spectacles, then you're just hating. You're just hating for the sake of hating. And I don't know why. Are you hating? Is our audience hating because he is anti-UFC? Is that what it is? Or he's anti-Dana White? Is that what it is? I don't know if he's anti-UFC per se, but just like anti the business or anti the UFC brass. I don't know. But that to me is is the most befuddling part of all of this. GC, your thoughts on what we saw on Friday?
Yeah, I mean, I am with Rick. I think that it was a massive success from the Jake Paul business standpoint. The fight itself really wasn't entertaining in any way, shape, or form. There was no real memorable moment other than the spectacle of it itself, Mike Tyson fighting at 58 years old. And I thought the best fight on the card was Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor, kind of what I thought going into it. It sort of was like what I was expecting. The co-main event was going to be the best fight of the night. The main event was going to be a spectacle. I was going to have to see what happened. And after watching it, it was lackluster. I'm glad Mike Tyson was safe. But I think you started the show asking what the biggest story of the weekend was.
Tell me.
I think we've answered it by how long we've talked about this, and also what you were saying, people coming up to you talking. I had multiple friends calling me, texting me the next day to talk about the fight. They definitely weren't doing the same with UFC 309. It really was like a cultural phenomenon, at least for the night. Everything on social media was going insane. So yeah, I mean, thoughts on the fight itself? It was incredibly underwhelming. There really were no memorable moments from it. I won't really look back on it. There's no chance I ever rewatch it. But in terms of Netflix making its debut in the world of boxing, I felt was very significant, and just the spectacle that was put on and how many eyeballs got on it was significant.
It felt to me the first time since Mayweather-McGregor that everyone was watching a singular fight.
My brother has purchased 2 pay-per-views. He is not a combat sports fan. Purchased 2 pay-per-views in his life. I guess only one.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather, and then he asked me who was going to win the fight on Friday, and he was going to a watch party to watch Jake Paul, Mike Tyson.
There it is. So to me, it felt, and maybe prior to that was Mayweather-Pacquiao, but honestly, Mayweather-Pacquiao felt like it was huge for the combat sports world. Mayweather-McGregor felt a little bit bigger. It broke through, and obviously MMA and boxing coming together. This, I mean, again, I'm just blown away by, moms, friends who never couldn't care less, and that's a small sample size. Teachers in my kids' school, just the reach, phenomenal. And let's be honest, the vast majority of that reach is because of Mike Tyson, because of what he has meant to sports in the world and in America in particular, and because of Netflix. Netflix just promoting it, having it up there, definitely helps. Gigantic deal. And so let's talk about the main event. What is the conclusion? Because I will admit, if you notice in the post-fight interview, I wanted to be respectful towards Mike. And so that's why I asked Jake, did you try to knock him out? That was my way of saying, did you carry him? And after the fight, I will tell you that I spoke to some people close, and I said, did you guys carry him? And the response that I got was, something like that, Okay. And then Jake goes to the press conference and essentially says he saw that he was hurt and, out of respect. He kind of admits it, right? And so what do you guys ultimately feel? Eric, let me ask you this. What do you feel like he ultimately did? Do you feel like he was carrying him from the jump? Do you feel like he saw midway through that nothing was really going to hurt him, so he took his foot off the gas? Do you think that that's all hogwash? I mean, Dana yesterday said he didn't think he carried him. He's just not good enough to beat him, and the carrying is an excuse for not being able to finish a 58-year-old man. What do you think?
I think he probably went in with the intention of testing it out. I think if Mike Tyson was capable of putting Jake Paul in more danger and actually made him use his reflexes and react to something, there's a chance he might have tried to knock him out. As it played out, there was no opportunity. Like, Mike Tyson was not going to threaten Jake Paul in any way. He looked old. He looked slow. He was not there to compete. It was not going to be a competitive fight. And so it's easy for Jake Paul to kind of pick his spots and then not press it further. There were many opportunities where I felt like if he, after the punch that was the strongest, followed up with additional shots in the same way that if Mike Perry was in there against him and trying to hurt him, he would have to fire a response back. He could have. He did not, and I'm fine with that. I have no issue with that. Like, if you came into this expecting a competitive fight between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, you were starting at the wrong place. Your objective feeling on it was in an incorrect spot that you were never going to get what you wanted. Mike Tyson was not capable of that, just flatly. That is what we were. If you wanted to see Mike turn back the clock and catch him, that was going to happen in the first 30 seconds or not at all. So again, if you're adjusting your expectations there, it wasn't there for him. Mike Tyson was not capable of competing with Jake Paul on that night, and I think most kind of knew that. I will say maybe it's most who are tuned into the combat world, because I had enough friends, as I said, throughout the week texting me like, Mike's going to kill him based on the rhetoric and based on the things the clips, but it just was never going to happen.
I actually gave Mike the first 2 rounds, but again, you'll never know, was Jake giving him the rounds, as people have suggested. Floyd gave Conor the early rounds in their fight. I just felt maybe the last 2 or 3 rounds, he went easy on him. He took his foot off the gas. And I didn't need to see, Mike looked very stiff and his legs looked very weak. And he walked in there with a with a knee brace. And he kept biting his glove. And that was a little bit awkward. And I know, as Mauro said, he's done that in the past. I don't recall it being that much. And then you find out, what he posted on social media on Saturday. We do have the post right here. This is one of those situations where you lost but still won. I'm grateful for last night. No regrets to get in the ring one last time. So I guess he's rethought that stance. I almost died in June, he wrote. I had 8 blood transfusions, lost half my blood and 25 pounds in hospital, and had to fight to get healthy to fight, so I won. And there are legitimate questions that should be asked of the Texas Commission and of everyone involved as to how they got over that, how they got over those hurdles, those health hurdles. To have my children, he continues, see me stand toe-to-toe and finish 8 rounds with a talented fighter half my age in front of a packed Dallas Cowboy Stadium is an experience that no man has the right to ask for. Thank you. And so great stuff there. I think everyone loves Mike, his transformation from, being a convicted rapist in the 90s to now is unbelievable. I don't think anyone could have predicted that. And what a journey and what an icon he is. But in the end, I thought he obviously looked very old. I have no interest in seeing him fight again. And I do believe that it is a little bit more competitive if it's the Mike Tyson of 2020, November of 2020, fighting on Friday, as opposed to the one that we saw on Friday. Do you guys remember how he looked against Roy Jones? And I know Roy Jones is older as well, but he moved much better in that fight. And just, he maybe wasn't as built as and cut as he was, because he was very impressive on weigh-in day, but I thought he was just a lot smoother and fluid and looked more like his old self. Do you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. 4 years is a lot of time, but it's even more time when you're 58. When the end of that 4 years is 58.
And going through what he just went through apparently in June. In the end, though, there's nothing that I could say in defense of the entertainment value that fight was. I can't defend it. It's just some of the other stuff about we were conned, or shame on boxing, or shame on this, shame on that. I'm like, I just
don't think that's part of the play, though, Aaron. I don't think that's part of the whole thing. The Jake Paul thing.
Yeah, maybe
outrage is the currency of this.
Yeah.
Had everyone just been finished off and been going, geez, that was a very competitive fight. Well done, lads. Jake, you edged the decision there. Well done.
Or if he straight sparked Mike Tyson, is everybody cheering?
No, this would be way worse.
No, but outrage, we have to remember, is a key component of this from the day it was announced. I don't think Jake Paul's sitting at home looking at these tweets going, oh no, Dave Portnoy didn't like it. Dave Portnoy's talking about me fighting. All of these people are talking about Jake Paul. That is a different thing than what we do here in sport. We have to remember that. This is currency in his world, and he's fucking rich now because everybody has a take. All these people who are upset about it, he's probably plotting what way can I spark this kind of conversation online again? He's not unhappy about this in any way, shape, or form. This is essentially what we were being sold.
I'm all for a critical analysis of saying, is there a problem with the industry? Is there a problem with all of combat sports in the sense that entertainment has become more of the conversation than competitive fighting? I'm okay with that. I'm okay if we would have that larger discussion.
That's not true, right?
I'm not suggesting one is true or not true. I'm just saying if that is the conversation to have, I'm okay with that being the conversation. But the fight by fight analysis of that, I think is just misguided. I would argue Stipe Miocic didn't belong in a cage with John Jones on Saturday. Do we have to then have a critical discussion of the UFC's entire business based on that? No, there is an entertainment component and there is a competitive fighting component. Those two things exist. If for one individual person's tastes, one is more important than the other and they've missed the mark on which one for that individual fight, I suggest not watching. To me, the entertainment value, the spectacle of Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson is up here, and the competitive boxing is far, far, far down the scale at the very bottom. If somebody is suggesting that they don't want to watch it on that basis, don't. That's my feeling. I would say that it was equally a mismatch, John Jones versus Stipe. Maybe not equally, but a significant mismatch, John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. Do we now have to go forward and say, is the UFC more of an entertainment product than a competitive product? No, because next weekend we'll get a competitive fight between two top-ranked contenders. There is a sliding scale of these things. Not every single fight is going to be that. If you had expectations that Mike Tyson was going to be competitive with Jake Paul at 58 years old, you fucked up. Period.
I got a
That's
bridge
it.
to sell you.
Yeah.
It might have been PT who tweeted this. Correct me if I'm wrong. Someone tweeted it, and I don't remember who. But you know what? I think it was actually Jedi Goodman who tweeted it. Our guy. He essentially said, Jake Paul didn't create the circus. He's just adding to the circus.
That's right.
Like this idea that he created this or turned boxing into a circus is absurd. And last thing I'll say on this before we move on to 309. Again, if the card was him versus Tyson, Holyfield Lewis, Gronk Shaq, Nate Robinson against Darren Williams, you could say like that was a black eye on boxing. In the end, Netflix got into combat sports, showed Taylor Serrano 2 to the world, a fight that, I have the program down here of the first fight. That's how much the first fight, means to me and how much I adore it. And both of them deserve our respect from now until the end of time. We got some other great fights. And shout out to that crowd at AT&T Stadium. They showed up early. Like, I've been to T-Mobile where there's 1,000 people for the co-main event. There were 1,000 people when Tank Davis fought in the quote-unquote co-main on Mayweather McGregor. Look at this. This is for Tyson. But like that thing was full. In the end, they said 72,000. There was a smattering up at the top, but that thing was packed. It was absolutely jam-packed. How they got there, God bless them. And the amount of celebs and the amount of people there. I got to meet the governor, guys. I got to meet Governor Abbott. Did you know that he's in a wheelchair? Someone said, you want to meet Governor Abbott? I said, absolutely. Let me just grab my red hat real quick. Just kidding. Just kidding. And I said to him, he said, where do you live, son? I was like, I live in New York. And he's like, well, I'll tell you what, no state taxes here. I was like, wow, that's a good sell. I appreciate that, Governor Abbott. That's the kind of people that were there in attendance. And those people got to see Taylor Serrano in person and are now talking about them and maybe looking them up and maybe going back to watch their first fight. So that is pretty significant. And that, to me, was the story of Saturday. That, Tyson Paul was on the marquee, but hopefully you came early enough to see at least those two warriors go toe-to-toe. And hopefully you said to yourself, you know what? Not only is boxing a thing that I need to watch more, women's boxing is a thing that I need to watch more. That, to me, was what I walked away with. And I was so happy, and obviously happy that, the main event didn't end in some kind of tragedy or disaster, because that was on the table. That was on the table.
I hope I'm clear on what I'm trying to say. Every Jake Paul fight seems to be some kind of indictment on, like, is this Jake Paul? None of this is specific to Jake Paul. This is the entirety of combat sports. We have to make these kind of like excuses. Oh, well, if you tuned in for the disaster, the abject disaster that was Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, you also got Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano. I don't think Jake Paul needs to have these excuses. Like, this is all of combat sports. The UFC puts on some things that are more spectacle than combat. The UFC puts on some things that are high combat and low spectacle. That's just what this is. Other boxing promotions, nobody is under the same microscope that Jake Paul is under. And I feel like it's a bit unfair, if I'm being honest. It just feels like everything with him has to be some indictment on exactly what he's doing when he's doing what everybody else is doing. There's just different degrees to it.
I love when you see like the Bellews or the Carl Froches of the world being like, you scaredy cat, you would never dare step foot in me. All they want is they want
the clout that they're claiming that he's after. They want the same clout. Everybody.
They're not trying, they won't get $40 million, but they would do anything for a $5 million payday. You wouldn't dare. You're not man enough to
step. At the press conference with Paddy Power, a betting company.
Tony Bellew, God bless him, in one breath is saying this guy isn't worth our time and shame on anyone who watches. The dude literally flew from the UK to Texas for that 1 minute little thing and obviously got paid for it. And guess what? Paddy Power ain't paying you to show up and crash any other press conference. So do you see the hypocrisy? While everyone is saying this isn't worth our time, they're profiting off of it. They're trying to attach themselves to it. They're trying to pick a fight so they could be the next one to get the lottery ticket. Like, spare me the sanctimonious bullshit. Thanks for watching this video. Hey, before you go, do me a favor, hit that sub button, give us a thumbs up, hit the little bell thingy as well. Leave us a nice comment or two. We appreciate you all very much.